This week on the Eldritch Lorecast.
So what they did was they switched over and started using the virtual tabletop, and basically everything just stopped.
Because those players had the laptops in front of them. They were doing everything.
On August 1st, people were allowed to start showing off their books.
Just like this.
Careful, James.
Don't open that book.
A copyright strike. You can only get 3 and your channel is gone, deleted, nothing you can do. And it's very bad.
The future of the game, this push toward digital, what does that really mean?
Quote, D&D is about individual creators coming in with their own voices and lending that to what we're doing.
If we do have a golden age of creator relations on the horizon, I really hope that there's not too much more of sticking a stick in your own bike spokes.
All that and more right now.
Hello and welcome to the Eldritch Lorecast, the #1 podcast in all the land. Ben is down today. We were looking forward to him coming back next week, though. I'm Shawn Merwin here with Dael Kingsmill and James Hake. And in honor of Ben being down with Concrud, I want to ask you first, Dael, what is your surefire remedy for dealing with Concrud, the thing that you catch that cannot die when you leave a convention?
Yeah, look, this is a real downer response, but I don't think there is one. I don't know that if there is one, I've not found it. I just be sick. I just stay horizontal, watch a lot of Good Witch, drink a lot of orange juice, and complain loudly to anyone who will listen.
That is a way of dealing with it. So kudos to you. James.
I deal with it by chugging an inordinate amount of vitamin C infused water and doing something I don't usually do, which is making a lot of RPG characters with no intent to play them. Rarely, if ever, do I do that. However, when I'm sick and I need something to occupy my mind, but playing video games is too difficult, D&D Beyond is there for me.
D&D Beyond, that's an answer I was not expecting.
That's what they should put on the ads. D&D Beyond, we're there for you.
A cure for Concrud. I've been doing that convention thing for 24 years now. And I've found 3 things help in equal parts. Adrenaline, denial, and whiskey. It's a mean cocktail, but it can really get you through that first week after a convention. Especially if you have work that you need to do, assuming you're not contaminating coworkers in any way, those 3 things can really help. But actually, I have a follow-up question, which is, Concrud is a thing, right? People are getting sick when they get back from conventions or any other large-scale event that you go to where you're mixing and mingling. Have you noticed, though, a phenomenon that someone local to me has called con drop, which is the sort of depression that hits after you go to something like a large gaming convention and then you go back to your normal routine? Have you noticed that as something in your purview?
Every day of my life, Shawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should see a psychologist probably. No, but I experience it after cons, but I also experience it after I game master an RPG session. Just the sense of like I have been so hyped on adrenaline the entire time, maybe even a little bit of like stage fright anxiety. The pressure is there, and then my friends are there, and the serotonin is high, everything is running, and then they go home, and it's just like empty. Oh yeah,
I've absolutely felt that DM drop. I talked about it in a video at some point where I was like, okay, being a DM is kind of weird sometimes. It I don't know, eddies up all your feelings in a strange way. But conventions is an interesting one because so many of the conventions I go to, I tend to attend more conventions in the US than Australia. And so it's kind of all bundled together into this big package where it's like, yeah, sure, I hit up a bunch of conventions, but it's all part of the US kind of package. So I don't think anything hits me until after I come home. And then, I mean, the jet lag's got me anyway, so who'd be able to tell the difference? But I don't know. Now that you've mentioned it, I might have had it once or twice after PAX Oz. So I'm ready to believe it's a real thing, very much.
For me, it's one of those deals where I'm with my people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like I'm home alone by myself writing games, and maybe I'll chat with someone on Zoom or have meetings, but there's something about being there with 71,000 of your closest friends. And then all of a sudden, that connection that you have just is severed quite severely. And it can be a real thing. And I've had talks with friends, local friends, about that feeling of loneliness that one might get after having that connection and then seeing it removed.
What I'm going to do to combat that this con season is I'm just going to go to back-to-back cons. In fact, I just made plans to do so. I managed to get my ticket to Big Bad Con. I'm going to be taking part in the meet and greet there for all of the industry newcomers and folks like that. I'm going to have office hours at the con. And so even though I missed my chance to buy a ticket, I'll be there. And then I bought my ticket for Gamehole Con the very next weekend, or the weekend before, whichever one. Yeah. Weekend before. Yeah.
Simply always be cunning. ABC.
Yeah.
I just feel like, if you never stop going to cons, how's it ever going to get you? Little hair of the dog.
Little hair of the dog.
That is 4 out of 5 dentists recommend going to cons every weekend for their patients that go to cons every weekend.
It's sort of a mental health versus COVID risk reward calculation you have to do there, huh?
This is true. Well, so everyone knows, our friends Ben and Dante will also be attending both Gamehole Con and Big Bad Con, or so I am told, which means not only are they doing the double con, they're doing it from Australia to North America. So
always be cunning. Yeah. That's dedication.
Always
be cunning dedicatedly.
I'm amazed that they're making it. I went to PAX Oz last year, and that flight murdered me. The fact that they did Gen Con and then they're going back and then they're going back again to do those two, unbelievable. Immense fortitude.
I'm so afraid for them. Dante, I'm afraid for you.
I am too. And I mean, they're staying in the US between the two conventions, which only makes sense. But still, as an American, I feel responsible for them. I know it's a tiny country with just a few people. So I feel like I need to take care of them. They will be all alone in this big country. And what will they do? It's kind of, I don't know, I'm getting sad just thinking about it. We have news to get into, so I can take my mind off of that.
Woo, woo, woo.
And the first bit of news is Gen Con happened. I know that's hard to believe.
It's over.
But things happened. Things happened there. Did you, either of you, even though you were not there physically, did you participate, watch anything, hear any news, or were you there and you just didn't let anyone know?
We went incognito.
Dressed as Deadpool.
I donned my Matt Mercer undercover disguise, which is just Matt Mercer but wearing a ball cap and aviator sunglasses. That's the way I met him.
And that's why no one recognized you, because they thought you were Matt Mercer.
Exactly. I got deluged in Critical Role fans, but no one thought I was me. Perfect.
Is that a no?
No.
I didn't. Look. I've been busy and distracted. I'm sure it was a lovely time.
It was a lovely time.
I got some real FOMO. I didn't expect I would get FOMO. Usually Gen Con is a con I just kind of, it's too big for me. I'll get agoraphobic. I don't really want to deal with all the pressure and the travel and the hotels and all of that. But seeing all the cool stuff that was going on at Gen Con, all the 50th anniversary D&D stuff, all the was there Draw Steel stuff going on, or am I misremembering?
Yes.
But all the Draw Steel, the Daggerheart, all of it that was going on there. I've really wanted to be there. It's a big year for RPGs.
It definitely is. It definitely was. One of the things that happened was the live play that they do. Dael is no stranger to that live play, having done that last year. Did you happen to get a glance at it this year at all?
I got a glance at some of what was happening. I haven't had the chance to watch the upload they've done of it yet, but it was Baldur's Gate voice actors.
And I didn't watch it. I was busy at that point. But what I heard was they did the whole production of live play on stage, watch the folks, and then they wanted to show off the virtual tabletop, codenamed Sigil. So what they did was they switched over and started using the virtual tabletop, and basically everything just stopped.
Oh no!
It wasn't like it wasn't that it didn't work, but it was everyone started doing what you do when you begin to use tools, which is look at the tools rather than actually performing, which is why a lot of people watch live play shows, because they want to see a performance. And so it was sort of awkward from the reports that I heard, going from this celebration and this live play as you would expect to and now let's look at the virtual tabletop.
That's tough as well, because from my experience of doing that live show last year, everyone who's involved is so busy doing so many things, particularly with Gen Con, that you only really have a couple of very brief opportunities to all get together before the game. So the idea of getting the squad together and getting, everyone sort of equipped and familiar with the VTT system very possibly wasn't much of an option. That's unfortunate.
Well, some of us have been in tech demo live play situations before, like when we partnered with Arkenforge to do the Pirates of the Ethereal Expanse live play at PAX Australia. I was nervous the whole time about the tech, not because it wasn't working, but because of user error. I'm not well versed in the new tech, and that tech was as simple as put a figure on a screen that has a map being played on it. I can only imagine, because those players had the laptops in front of them. They were doing everything. It was a real live ammunition demo of that thing. And
we got a chance to use the Arkenforge table before we played live as well.
Yeah, for real. So I don't know. This feels like an unforced error on Wizards' part. Like they can do a little smoke and mirrors lip syncing going on while the Archies play out front. Just like do the map yourself and let it happen.
And it brings to mind this concern about digital games and digital D&D and what it adds and what it subtracts from a game. And so to have it not be what the people were sort of expecting is an interesting maneuver. Now, I did not watch this, so I am just going on what other people have said that it felt like. But I don't have the chat open, but maybe people in the chat have an experience watching it or with that to share. But while that goes on, there were a couple other bits of news from Gen Con that I wanted to highlight. One was the ENnie Awards. If you are into awards, the ENnies are probably the biggest role-playing game awards there are. They are given out Saturday, either the Friday or Saturday night of Gen Con. And the big winner this year, or one of the big winners, was Shadow Dark.
Yeah.
Which won ENnies for Best Game, Best Layout and Design, Best Rules, and Product of the Year. So congratulations to the folks at Shadow Dark for what is a well-deserved and quite impressive showing.
Yeah. Can you pitch me on Shadow Dark real quick? Because I've heard so much about it, but it hasn't really cohered into an idea for me.
Yeah, same. All I really know is that all of my friends on YouTube who make OSR content, or old school Renaissance content, have been raving about Shadow Dark for an age, but I need them deets.
Teos and I did an in-depth look at the Shadow Dark rules. What I'm going to say is this. For the OSR crew, for the old school Renaissance crew, which is in this case very much into the gritty, you are probably going to die unless you are very, very careful and or very, very clever. This is a great game. It has built up its own pool of users, of its own players, and it's meeting the expectations of those players perfectly. Kelsey Dion, who designed the game and the book, did an absolute masterful job. They should teach this in like business class about building your audience and then giving your audience exactly what your audience wants. It's masterful. The rules are quite simple, and they definitely harken back to the old school D&D vibes. I'm not going to go any deeper than that because Teos and I got accused of like being mean to this game. And all we were doing was like an in-depth analysis game-wise of what it delivers. But, we got, why are you hating on this? We weren't. We were just discussing it as game designers.
Why do you hate beautiful things, Shawn?
I know.
Why do you hate them?
Well, can I take a guess? Because it seems like from my knowledge of the OSR, Castles and Crusades and Dungeon Crawl Classics is probably what I meant to say there, and other games that are in that sort of genre, is that one of the main selling points of them is that the system hardly matters. It's about creating a very light system that supports ingenuity, player ingenuity in play, rather than sort of system mastery or really, if we want to be a little bit pejorative about it, engagement with the system. If you want a game where you can kind of like mildly simulate a fantasy environment and then think your way through it, that's a gold standard OSR game. Does that sound about right to you?
That sounds perfect. It sounds exactly like this game gets out of its own way and allows the players to do the things, or the game masters to run the game that they want to run.
And whether or not you like that, that's a you thing.
The issue that we had was we were told by all these game designers that this game did this thing. And so when we looked at the game didn't do what these designers were telling us it did. What it did, James, was exactly what you said, which is give you enough to run a game that you want to run. I played 2 sessions of Shadow Dark, and both of them were run by really fantastic game masters who had terrain and all sorts of fancy things, and they ran it just like 5th edition. And so I was expecting this gritty, dark, deadly experience, and what I got was a light version of 5th edition. And so that was coloring my view of the game as a text and set of rules to create an experience. And so that's sort of what Teos and I talked about in our review.
There are really sort of 2 dramas, 2 discourses in all of RPG discussion. And this game is not enough of a game to be called a game, and this game is too much of a game to be called fun, I think are the 2 real discourses that happen ad infinitum.
You know what? This brings to mind Ludo narrative. But we're going to talk about that later. Yeah. Because I also want to report about the Diana Jones Award, also awarded at Gen Con. This year, the winner was the United Paizo Workers Union.
Yes.
And so, kudos to the Diana Jones Award judges for, again, coming to the table with something not necessarily game design related, but looking at the social aspect of the gaming community and how the Paizo Workers Union is a first step in revolutionizing how game designers are treated by companies.
Hell yeah.
Any questions about Gen Con? Anything that you guys want to know?
What was your favorite bit, Shawn?
My favorite bit was probably running Ben's adventure a few times, and then running the epic on Sunday morning, even though I was sick and barely awake. We got to present for the first time in the Bald Man Games D&D area, Grim Hollow. We had a blast. I know that my players really enjoyed it. Ben wrote a great adventure that we will be polishing up and running at other conventions. So it was a weird convention for me because it was work. I had very little free time. So it was run a game in the morning, go to the booth in the afternoon, go to a meeting or a podcast or something in the evening, and then go crash hard.
Right.
And get right back at it at 7 a.m. the next morning. So it was a weird convention for me, but it's just always great to feel that connection, as we said earlier.
Why would anyone have con drop after a weekend like that?
I mean,
Really?
just can't understand it.
Shawn, you've run a bunch of epics before and with Baldwin Games before. So one thing I didn't realize is that this Grim Hollow epic was like in cooperation with Baldwin Games. This is the real deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was. They provided some game masters for us. They worked with us to provide the space, sell the tickets, do all of that stuff. All of our events sold out, which was cool. And this epic was on the smaller side compared to some that have run. We were running 4 tables at once, but the story, I don't want to spoil it because it's going to be out there running, but the story was about something that happened that's very important in the region of Astoria on a certain day when it gets very, very dark. But we had 2 tables that were sort of against each other. It wasn't PvP, but we had one side of the story and the other side of the story. And then right in the middle, everything turns on its ear. And it's going to be fun to run this at other conventions coming up. So,
that's beautiful.
That.
The Grim Hollow fans are going to love it.
It sounds like there were really fun adventures being run. Like if you were lucky enough to get in on the Grim Hollow epic or on the Draw Steel playtest where they did the Fall of Black Bottom, these adventures genuinely sound like I don't know. There's part of me that when I think of gaming at a convention, as much as I enjoy it, as much as I have fun, I often think of those adventures as being like the simplest, like paint by numbers, boiled down version of a tabletop RPG adventure possible. But these ones sound like they got the juice.
I heard great reports of the Daggerheart playtest adventure Marauders of Windfall coming back as well. When I was glancing through, it looks like all of those seats were sold out. And I got a pre-Gen Con look at that adventure that I ran through beforehand with, someone who was running games there. And that was a really fun adventure. It was like, it was a whole Sky Pirates thing that came together really well with pre-gens and everything like that. And it showed off some really interesting social combat, basically, the battles of wits that went on in that system that I think people who are looking for a system like that's often asked for in games like D&D, I think looking through that playtest packet will be very cool for them.
I did the playtest, not at Gen Con, but after of Draw Steel, of that adventure. Loads of fun. Not going to go any further than that right now, but maybe we'll talk about it at a later date. Oh, but some other news that sort of happened while Gen Con was happening was on August 1st, people were allowed to start showing off their books, including a bunch of YouTube influencers, just like that one.
Careful, James.
Don't open that book.
I'll get us copyright striked if I'm not careful.
Don't you open that book.
Do not open that book. So, and we come to find out that interesting things have been going on behind the scenes, including Wizards sending out a PDF copy of the Player's Handbook even weeks ago to some influencers, then sending them a physical copy of the book early and inviting them to talk about it, but not show it, apparently.
Yeah.
So take it away, Dael.
Yeah, so probably I would estimate a couple months ago went out the email that sort of said, hey, we want to work with you. We're going to send out early PDF copies of the PHB so that basically creators can get content ready to go for immediately after the embargo ends, right? It's a fairly common practice. You get this early stuff. You get the benefit of having the first content out on the field so that people will come to your content first. And we get some free marketing from it, right? So you're not under any obligation to talk about this thing that you've been sent, but there is kind of this sort of quid pro quo going. And so the PDF went out a couple of months ago, and then there was a second email that sort of said, hey, if you want a physical copy, we have a limited number of physical copies available. Let us know if you want one. But the embargo still stood until August 1st. We weren't allowed to talk about anything within the book until August 1st. We were just allowed to prepare content. Now, come August 1st, From my perspective, I just thought this was really funny, being not at Gen Con weekend and just filtering things through stuff. Well, for a few days I thought it was really funny, and then I was blind with rage. But for the first few days I thought it was really funny because these emails would come in that would be like, we should have clarified. The PDF we sent you, the watermarked PDF, because everyone got a little watermark. Mine says Dael Kingsmill. It says whatever your name or brand name or whatever is across the page, so that if you leak it, they know who leaked it, right? They said, don't use any of those as visual aids in your content, please. We should have said that. We should have made it more clear. It was a very polite email, but it was a little bit funny to receive. And then the emails just kind of kept coming and kept getting a little bit more extreme. They were like, okay, we also should have said this. So basically what ended up happening, and it was kind of focalized, at least through my sort of gathering of information through the YouTuber Jorf Dan. I know the PH is silent, but you put the PH in there and you're going to live with it. So Jorf Dan had done a flip through stream where he looked through the player's handbook after the embargo had lifted, and then pretty quickly was smashed with a copyright strike. Now, for those playing at home who don't know, there is a huge gulf of a difference between a copyright claim on YouTube content and a copyright strike on YouTube content. And the difference on the end of the person claiming copyright is just how evil they want to be that day, I guess. So if you make a copyright claim on a YouTube video, you can choose from an array of things. You can keep the video up but take all of the earnings from it. You can eliminate the elements that you have copyrighted. So, take out those visual sections or take out the audio sections that are infringing on your copyright, or you can take down the whole video. But none of those things broadly impact the channel. A copyright strike, you can only get 3 and your channel is gone, deleted. There's nothing you can do, and it's very bad. Like you can appeal any of these decisions, copyright claim or copyright strike, but the odds are not in your favor because the entire YouTube system is kind of designed around the idea that, hey, we're going to not piss off the corporations, right? Because you as an individual, you have defenses against these kinds of things, like you have fair use as a defense that you can use, but that doesn't stop someone from litigating you, right? And YouTube doesn't want any part of that. They just want it to shut up and go away. So usually YouTube errs on the side of the corporations to the point where they used to just automatically give all the earnings to corporations, and corporations used to just en masse make copyright claims so that they would get all the earnings from videos. And then by the time the process went through and you said, I didn't infringe on your copyright, I didn't use that, music that Sony has claimed. By the time it went through, all the earnings had already happened and they'd already just been sent to the corporation. So there was a lot of sort of enticement for corporations to kind of game the system. And a lot of those sort of automated systems that the corporations were using are still in place. But see, now I'm sorry, I'm just getting into the weeds of everything all over the place. I apologize.
Our listeners love it, Dael.
No, this is stuff I don't know, so please keep going.
I just think it's valuable to know what is happening on sort of the other side of the curtain when this stuff goes down. But I mean, since then, YouTube has put things in place where there's sort of a what do they call it? A period of time where the money is just held. Escrow, that's what it's called. They just hold the money until it's all kind of decided. But broadly speaking, the system is kind of designed to prefer a corporation because YouTube is more scared of a corporation than they are of an individual.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
When you say a copyright strike, who puts that strike on that channel? Is it YouTube? Is it the person claiming copyright?
It is the person claiming copyright, or people authorized to do that on their behalf. So in this case, with the D&D sort of kerfuffle, it was a sort of third-party legal firm who were making the strikes on behalf of Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro. And they had that permission. They put in the claim and YouTube then executes it on their behalf, right?
Okay.
So it's a scary, scary thing when you as a creator get a copyright strike. They don't get removed from your channel. They stay there. And if you get 3 strikes, you are out. And when you're a creator of the level of Jorf Dan with a PH that is meant to be silent, it's really particularly scary because you're small enough that no one gives a crap to try to help you. YouTube isn't going to come to bat for you. They don't care because you're not a big fish. You're this small fry. But you're also big enough that you are, to some degree, reliant on the earnings that you're getting from that. So that's a really, really scary thing to happen. And I don't know, man. I just woke up, and this was the first thing I saw in the day. And I was so angry on behalf of creators because I had been getting those emails and I knew what was required and I knew what had been clarified. And there was clearly a miscommunication on the corporate end between the legal firm and the creator team. And the creator team, I just really feel for them because they've been really doing so much work trying to foster these relationships with creators and be excited with them. I had my meeting for the sponsorship that I think I'm allowed to talk about now. I think that was the last of July was when that ended. But you have your meeting and it's someone who loves D&D, who's excited about these new things that are happening. And they want to share that with you as a creator because they know that you're going to be excited. And then they know that when you're excited, your watchers are going to be excited. And they want that. They want to spread that because, yeah, of course, first of all, it's good for business. But then on top of that, it's because they just are excited about this game that they love. But those are the boots on the ground. Those are the people who are doing, everything in their power to make this work and who had to do all the work to try to get that strike removed. And I mean, thank God that they did. But on the other end of the spectrum, you've got this sort of, I don't know, this soulless being that is making these choices to hit all the creators with the stick. Like we're all getting the carrots and they're just like, but we're also going to whack you with the stick just for fun. Like there was obviously a miscommunication, but it still frustrates me down to my core because while there are these people who are doing their best, there's also these people who couldn't give less of a crap about the creators or the people who buy the product. They are just here to maximize profit. And you can feel the lack of respect they have for the creators who are doing this marketing for them and the lack of respect that they have for the audience of those creators. That's how I'm feeling about it. That's how I'm feeling about it right now. I'm really stoked on, I love the team who work for D&D who got it fixed. I think that they probably had a really bad last couple of days of Gen Con trying to get that sorted out. But as a creator, I don't know, it just really kind of touched a nerve, I think.
Well, it just seems unbelievable how consistently Wizards will put a stick in their own bike spokes. Like you're saying, Dael, this is the engine. This is the hype machine. And they are so afraid of I guess a PDF being pirated is what it seemed to be behind all of those emails. It's, hey, if you're putting up images that could be stripped out to make a pirated copy, that is what we are going to nail you for. And I guess, but it's inevitable. They don't want to hamstring their own sales by having a pirated PDF. I get it. But surely disrupting the hype machine to this degree is causing an even greater level of financial distress among people who are on the fence about buying this new edition of the game than they would be if there was a PDF floating around.
Yeah. And after it's because it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's after a long string, people are joking about this being the digital Pinkertons. You know what I mean? People are remembering. And, there's that piece of wisdom about how a business or a product can be dead for a long time before the business knows it's dead, because you are just chipping away at a community's kind of loyalty to your product. And then finally that last straw is going to break the camel's back and you're just going to lose it. And it just frustrates me because it doesn't have to be this way. People are going to make pirate copies of the PDF. This isn't the way that they're going to do it.
All right. So this is something I never would think of myself ever saying. I'm going to defend the lawyers. No.
No. I think do it, because I think that a lot of this comes down to miscommunication. I don't know who the individual is, but go on.
It is miscommunication, and it is the fact is, for a corporation of that size, a corporation or even a business that's even much smaller than that, there's the business, and then there's the legal world. And Dael, you were saying that they don't give a crap about the buyers and the sellers. They don't give a crap about their own employees. They don't give a crap about their profits. They only give a crap about the thing that exists in this legal world. And it's not the fact that there will be PDFs made. They know that's going to happen. It's the fact that they need to pretend that they care that PDFs are being made. Because that is where, in the legal world, they can then point and say, you see how we went after this person and this person and this person because of what their actions led to a PDF being made? That proves that we care enough about our IP that these other entities that might come after our IP, now we have a leg to stand on. And so it's this world that's outside of the known world of even rational people that they are dwelling in, that they are living in.
I have a quick comment. I'll just say this reminds me a lot, Shawn, of something that came up during the OGL crisis, of them being worried that they weren't defending their intellectual property strongly enough. That's a huge part of what caused all of that kerfuffle way back then. Okay, anyway, Go ahead, Dael.
No, I'm sorry I'm talking so much. But no, it's a really good point. Absolutely. And particularly when it comes to trademarks, you are legally obligated to defend your trademarks, right? There was that big thing that happened years ago with Taylor Swift where people were like, she's going after fans who are making fan t-shirts. It's like, yeah, but she literally has to, because she trademarked it. So there is absolutely a thing there. But this is where I think the knowledge of the distinction between a copyright strike and a copyright claim becomes valuable, because you can defend your IP without being so aggressive and in a way violent towards the creators. You can be making those claims, but someone somewhere, and this is where it really reminds me of the Pinkertons, is that someone somewhere approved something they shouldn't have. Someone somewhere didn't know the difference and was just like, yeah, copyright strike them. And that oversight it's a real matter of life and death to creators, and it matters that you pay attention to that. But I agree. I would defend the lawyers as well. I don't think that they were.
No, I'm not defending the lawyers. I am in no way defending the lawyers in this. I am saying
you would never defend a lawyer.
They are Lovecraftian in their.
Well, I just also think that they're, as a third-party company, of course they don't care about D&D. You know what I mean? Right. They don't know the difference. They don't care about the difference. They're doing the thing that they were told to do. So I'm not about to be angry at them for that. But I do think that, I don't know, it's the lack of care that really gets to me, particularly when the creator team are trying to give us stuff to work with. They're trying to give it to us. And then someone higher up the chain clearly has said, no, we don't want anyone to have anything to work with. We don't want you to have any visual. I mean, again, I'm not sure if I'm technically allowed to talk about this, but I'm pretty sure that I am allowed to talk about this, but I'm a little bit nervous to talk about it because my pay hasn't come through yet for the sponsorship. But I think about the example between the first meeting of what I'm going to work with for my sponsored video, right? And that conversation is with people who love D&D and they're excited. They're like, we love this about your videos, so we're going to give you this to work with and this to work with and this to work with. And then as it filters through the different layers, there are people saying, no, actually, you can't give them that to work with. And you can't give them that to work with. And you can't give them that to work with. And that, that ended up, that's fine, because I was going to make a video that was, almost entirely original content anyway. But it's interesting to see the way that it gets stripped away from what they want to be giving you as an audience who love this product versus what they end up being allowed to give you.
And it's not just in terms of YouTubers, influencers, even as a creator of the products, There have been many, 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 many times when I've been working on a project, not just for Wizards, but for other companies as well, where it was, okay, Shawn, write this, and I write that to spec. And then later I find out that what I wrote didn't pass through the lawyers. Not because of what I wrote, but because of what I was told to write, because the lawyers are stopping their own employees from doing things that their employees want to do for those reasons. So I do feel for those creators. And it's not just the creators. It's not just the third party influencer folks that are getting screwed over by this. Wizards of the Coast themselves are sometimes getting screwed over by their own lawyers more than you would imagine. Same thing with any other content creators or businesses where there is a lawyer element overlooking the process.
I was chatting with the producer of a project, an RPG project that I'm working on right now that hasn't been announced yet. And that producer also happens to be like a creative professional. And we were talking about how vital it is for producers to be creative people in and of, in their own right, because it allows them to interface more directly and more holistically and just overall better with the creative work. They're not just holding the purse strings. They're not just managing the calendar. They are interfacing with the creative department to make all of those requirements work within the greater context. And I don't know that there are many lawyers that have a passion for D&D, but you would think that Wizards would, actually, no, I don't think Wizards would. Actually, I take it back.
Lawyers, am I
right? But it would be an improvement. It would be an improvement if there was an in-house legal team of Wizards of the Coast that cared about D&D or cared about Magic the Gathering as a creative enterprise and not just as a legal property. But even saying that, even as the idealistic looky-loo that I am, I do think that might be a bit of an ask. It might be a bridge too far to have a whole legal team that actually cares about the IP. They just got to do their job.
We have a new interview from comicbook.com by none other than Christian Hoffer, who talked to Jess, who is the new Vice President of Franchise and Product for Dungeons & Dragons. What that title means yet, we're still trying to figure out. Is Jess in charge of everything at D&D or just part of that? We'll come to find out soon. What Christian asked Jess about and what Jess answered was more about the future of the game in a couple of different ways. One was this push toward digital. What does that really mean? And then the other question was, Jess worked on Magic when it was in an awkward state. And she really brought it around. And I have talked to people both on the record and off the record about their experiences with Jess. And I have gotten almost all glowing reviews, even from people who aren't necessarily glowing review givers. It seems like her leadership was really needed there. And now she's been brought to do the same thing for D&D.
I want to read one paragraph from this interview. Christian writes, a big part of Lanzilla's approach to Dungeons & Dragons is freedom, both from the traditional constraints of a major IP and also the push to make every product conform to the same design approaches or types of voices. Quote, a lot of how we're really trying to think about it is, how does this give us more freedom rather than how is this giving us more constraints, Lanzilla said. Because I think especially when you think about not only the rules, but Dungeons & Dragons as a quote unquote franchise, you can look at a franchise one of two ways. You can go, I want to maniacally over-engineer this thing so that every part is interconnected. And when I sat down and looked at it, I said, that's not what D&D is about at all. D&D is about individual creators coming in with their own voices and lending that to what we're doing. And I want you to square that circle with what we've just been talking about. This is such a lovely approach. This is exactly what I want to be hearing from people who are in, decision-making positions of Wizards of the Coast, because this is the sort of utopian idea that I want to be cultivated in this community of a D&D that is very, very open and that has a lot of strong creative support. I guess at a certain point you have to say, well, fool me 5 times, shame on me again, I guess. But seeing things like this, seeing such a, and it goes on like this, many, many paragraphs that are just as hope-inspiring as this one. And it makes me want to believe so hard that there is sort of a golden age of creator relations on the horizon for D&D in this new 50th anniversary edition.
I think all of that sounds very positive.
Well said. Are they holding a gun to you, Dael?
No, why would you say that, Shawn?
Blink twice if you're safe.
No, I think that's a really thoughtful response. I think it makes me hopeful. I just hope that we're not going to, if we do have a golden age of creator relations on the horizon, I really hope that there's not too much more of sticking a stick in your own bike spokes between now and then, because we're in an interesting place where creators are having to choose whether they trust working with the company. And that's a difficult thing because we're already, you're dealing with a company who, when you're doing sponsorships, things like that, they are seeing your audience as numbers. And you as a creator, or at least I as a creator, am seeing my audience as people who put their trust in me and the content that I'm putting out. And so it matters where I put my trust. And so when you have, hit after hit after hit, and a big hit like this last one, it really makes a lot of creators, particularly small up and coming creators, who there are a lot of, and they're very exciting. I'm thrilled about this new wave of creators we're getting. They are going to have to make the choice: is it worth the risk to make this content, particularly when Daggerheart is coming out, when Drawsteel is coming out, and these are companies that are fostering that kind of relationship. And so I don't know. I hope they can hang on until this kind of positive new age can be implemented. That's all. I wrote it down again. No,
it's a great point you make, because it's a critical juncture for Wizards here, right? Wizards, it is known, fears neither man nor God when it comes to D&D's market supremacy. Like, they do not even register Paizo as a threat to D&D's hegemony over the fantasy RPG market, over the RPG market, period. And so I hardly believe they see MCDM as a threat. Maybe kind of sort of they see Critical Role as a threat, but only because Critical Role is a media company. Only because Hasbro considers D&D a media property and not a role-playing game. So, like, I hope that someone within the Wizards business hierarchy gets a little bit spooked, that they see how pivotal a period this is, when not only D&D is changing, but also new competitors are rising up to challenge it. The tough thing is, I think they'll be perfectly happy to ride out the mass audience, the brand name appeal that they have. And if they choose to do that, I hope that a lot of small indie content creators hit a damn gold mine with some of these other games. I hope that there is a gold rush here and that they get their bag.
So I think we might be talking about two different things. I think what Jess was talking about here is not content creators as in influencers who talk about the game. She's talking about the creators of the actual product,
right?
Which is a little bit different, because as James is saying, we are hitting a crossroads. We're hitting many crossroads, but one of the big crossroads right now is, here is what D&D has been for years. It was these books, these booklets, then these books, then maybe a box set. Oh, and now maybe minis, and then it's growing, but it's still at its core a tabletop role-playing game, or has been. And now we're at a revolution. We're at a revolution. And Jess, as the VP of franchise and product, is being tasked with doing something I don't know if anyone can do, which is to figure out this thing that we all love, that has brought us together, this game. How do we continue it, given all of the changes in technology, in terms of population, in terms of people who are interested in the game? How do we make it so that it's hitting all the right spots for all the right people? And so I think what she's talking about here is making bets on what will be best for everyone. And part of that is not getting stuck in what has been, not getting stuck on this physical publishing is all we can do. And if we do anything digital, people are going to complain that their game is changing because it's now online as opposed to in their books. But also keeping in mind that part of this game is exactly that. It is writing things down with a pencil on paper and clattering these dice on a table for a lot of people. And something that is making the game popular again is that, is parents or teachers or even the kids themselves wanting to close their laptops and turn off their iPhones and sit down and actually talk with people. So to get too far away from that is also a risk. And so that's where Jess is finding herself now as she becomes the vice president of all that.
Woo!
Yeah, that's sort of the question that I have is how do we help Jess help us? How do we show Jess what's important to us about this game and how we want to play it and what we want it to represent to us and to the world outside of us? It's just it's a small question. I'm sure you've got this covered.
I've been working on this in the background the whole time, but I don't know, man.
Yeah. And that's why I love people who come on and complain about every little thing that people like Jess say. Oh, you didn't answer the question. How is digital going to screw us over? Right? She's not going to come out and say that. But if you ask them the question I just asked, how would you do it? What would you do? And then they start to answer and they realize, oh, well, you just ruined Hasbro for good by giving away everything that they own. Or you just did this other thing, which leaves out half of the gamer population. It's a hard thing to do. And yet we expect people like Jess to just snap their fingers and do the perfect thing. And that's why her answers to me were as good as they could be for the situation that she's currently in, which is try to figure out how to monetize this changing game in a changing society with changing technology without stepping on everyone as you do it.
I think this is a clear-cut example of why there are so many people out there who prefer games made by small publishers, is because they don't have to deal with the complicated net of incentives and responsibilities that a major corporation like Hasbro has to navigate. You know, if you're dealing with, you know, like let's even go beyond indie creators self-publishing on itch.io. Let's talk about, I don't know, like Monty Cook Games or something like that, a solid mid-level publisher. You know, that's someone who you can email a representative and you will speak with a real person who is in a company small enough that they probably have real say in what policy is. You can find a way to work with that game. Or honestly, they probably just have a less restrictive policy period to begin with.
Sure.
Anyway, play small games, you know, play D&D, have fun with it, but play smaller games.
Speaking of very small games, you thought that, maybe in 2025, I'll play 2024 5e or Tales of the Valiant even, or Draw Steel or Daggerheart. Surely there aren't any more games coming out that fit that fantasy niche. Well, I've got some bad news or good news, depending. Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere RPG is kickstarting right now. Last I checked, it was at just over $7 million, with still more than 2 weeks to go. Probably going to smash the Avatar Legends record of close to $10 million. And it is a fantasy RPG game based on Brandon's two Mistborn and what's the other one?
Stormlight Archive.
Stormlight. There you go. It's a thing. It's a game that's being kickstarted that's doing very, 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 very well.
I would say it's probably in the same range band as Tales of the Valiant is for difference from a modern D20 game. By which I mean to say It is a modern D20 game. It is not trying to play with 2d6 in the way Draw Steel is. It's not trying to play with 2d12 in the way that a Daggerheart is. It's D&D like.
Is you know that, or you're guessing that?
Is my experience with the material that I've seen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I went on Demiplane, which has a way for you to create a character, and I started creating a character, and I'm like, I've done this before. I feel like I don't know. I didn't play anything beyond just picking some random things for character creation, but it's definitely an option. It's going to be out there in the world, coming to you soon.
Man, you love high praise, don't you, Shawn?
I sure will exist.
It may be the greatest thing ever. The team that they've shown has worked on some very high profile games, from 5e to, I think, Star Wars, Edge of the Empire was one of the creators. So, I mean, the creative team is amazing. They've obviously got some very popular stuff to work with. I mean, Brandon Sanderson's last Kickstarter was that 4 surprise novels Kickstarter, which made a mere $41 million a year or so ago.
Just a couple.
Chump change.
So, yeah, my question was only 7 million after 41 million. What's wrong with you folks?
we also, I should mention, we've got a slight correction that Draw Steel uses 2d10 now instead of 2d6, and just journalistic integrity requires that I say that out loud within the same episode. But it is interesting to me. It's this seemingly insatiable hunger for, like, yes, I do want another 3rd, 4th, 5th fantasy TTRPG. I will support this product. And it once again reminds me that we have to look at so many different metrics of success before we can decide what games have a chance in terms of, like, longevity of play. Will they make an impression that lasts within this gaming community? Because every game can make $10 million on crowdfunding. And it just becomes a question of, okay, are they supporting this because they like Avatar? Are they supporting this because they like the creator? Are they supporting this because, do they just enjoy the thrill of spending their money on a crowdfunding project? Any number of things. And it's just yet another to the pile of question marks of who is going to last in this race. I mean, it's like James mentioned earlier, Wizards don't see these other games as a threat. And I don't think they should at this point, if that makes sense. It's like, I am thrilled and looking forward to a lot of them. But are they going to be a threat in terms of their longevity? I don't know, man.
One of the things that you can look at is...
I'm such a downer today. That's great that you made so much money on Kickstarter. That's great. I love that.
It's awesome. One of the things I love to look at is how many seats of games run at Gen Con. Gen Con's a pretty big role-playing game convention. And so you would think that the number of seats for games that you can buy a ticket to play would show the relative popularity of the game system of actual players of that game. I have a look at some numbers from 2024 Gen Con. 15,815 seats of Dungeons and Dragons were available to purchase, according to this chart.
Say that number one more time.
15,815.
It's a lot of seats.
You could buy a lot of seats. If you were to guess based on that number, this is hard to read, but I'm going to just say the Cypher System or Daggerheart. The Cypher System games and Daggerheart had the same available seats to buy a ticket to play. So 15,000 for Dungeons and Dragons. How much would you guess for the Cypher System or Daggerheart?
Daggerheart, I'm going to put that in the single-digit thousands. I'm going to put
360.
No.
Now, this is just for sale, right? This is in the system.
But Daggerheart, wild.
For Daggerheart,
I mean, I guess, yeah.
The game's not out, to be fair.
Yeah.
Right. But and Daggerheart and the Cypher System were near the top 20 of other games or games being run. A game like Call of Cthulhu had less than 2,000.
Ooh.
And that's in the top 4. Avatar Legends, huge Kickstarter. The game's been out for quite a while now. Around 2,000 seats available to, and that doesn't even mean they all got played and bought.
That's more than I expected to be available.
That's more than I expected for Avatar Legends.
Yeah. So
well, because there's also this interesting. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
You can add like the top 20 other than D&D, and you would get right around D&D in terms of.
That's how the OR report always turned out up until they stopped doing it. The number of games being played concurrently on Roll20, and it was just like always you could fit everything below D&D in the top place into the same amount of space.
What's interesting to me about this is that if I'm thinking about Gen Con, it is a tabletop gaming convention, right? It is like the big dog in conventions for tabletop gaming. But it's also so specific to tabletop gaming that it's, you're not going to make the trek out to Indianapolis if you are a general nerd. You know what I mean? And so I'm wondering what that does to the numbers. And that's part of why I'm so surprised that Avatar had so many seats available versus Critical Role, just because even though the game isn't out already, and that does make a lot of sense, I know that there's a huge portion of Critical Role fans who are more in it for the entertainment than they are for the gaming. But I would still expect there to be a really decent overlap between gamers who would go to Gen Con anyway and gamers who like Critical Role. You know what I mean? I don't know.
So, but I think, Dael, it comes to your point of money made, great. But what does it say about the staying power and the playability of these games? And it'll be interesting to see. I think we've talked about this before, is who comes in second in 4 years, right? Is it Pathfinder 2E, or does Daggerheart overtake it, or does Draw Steel overtake it, or does this new Kickstarted game overtake it?
It seems entirely to me like the number 2 spot will be taken by the side, so competitive, by the game that cultivates and maintains the strongest relationship with its most passionate fans. Because we can see that, D&D can survive strongly on brand recognition and, it being synonymous with RPGs as a hobby. D&D, for better or for worse, will probably be everyone's gateway into RPGs unless you're a very unusual person. I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean in a sort of statistical aberration sort of way.
That's really funny.
We're all very abnormal people over here.
Yes.
If your spider's gay, org.
No, we're all weirdos for playing RPGs.
Well, I forgot that I'm in charge of this clown car, and we are over time.
No!
So I want to ask James, if people want to ask a question, which we didn't get to this week, where would they send that question?
Well, you could send it to podcast@ghostfiregaming.com.
You can do that, and then we will talk about it either live or on the podcast version or wherever else. And if you want to watch us live, you have to come to us either Eastern Time, 7 p.m., Pacific Time. James, what time is it?
It's our podcast starts at 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time.
Dael, or if they're in that special place down south of the equator, when do they come to watch our show?
Known as Australia. Look, if you're East Coast, you got to be 9 a.m. I don't know what's happening in Western Australia. You can figure yourself out.
All right. You have it there. The love of your fellow country people is palpable. I want to thank James and Dael and Dante out there in the ether for coming and talking with me today. We will catch you next time.
Woo! Ba-ba-da, 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 ba-ba-da.
Dante says, I cut you off 20 minutes ago. You've been talking to yourself the whole time.